Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's kick things off by taking a look at the day's headlines. Crunch time in Beijing. With no sign of their trade dispute abating, South Korea and Japan are due for high-stakes talks in the Chinese capital. Using its sizable influence, the host nation presses both sides to solve their issue through talks. With diplomacy on shaky ground, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo urges North Korea to return to negotiations aimed at denuclearizing the regime. His comments come as Washington's point man on the North is in Seoul for related meetings. Plus, South Korea is banning several Audi, VW and Porsche toxic polluting diesel models from the nation's roads. It's also slapping the automakers with multi-million-dollar fines and referring them to the prosecution. The top diplomats of South Korea and Japan are set to sit down for talks on this Wednesday as tensions continue to sour between the two neighbours. Seoul's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa will sit down with her Japanese counterpart Taro Kono in Beijing to discuss pending bilateral issues. Kang is expected to urge Tokyo to come to the negotiating table to resolve the tensions, while raising Seoul's opposition, its deep opposition to Tokyo's export controls on South Korea. The meeting comes just days before the deadline for Seoul to decide whether to renew its intel sharing pact with Japan, known as the General Security of Military Information Agreement, or GSOMIA. China's foreign minister has expressed grave concerns about the spat between South Korea and Japan, urging the two sides to resolve their issues through negotiations. On the sidelines of the Seoul, Beijing, Tokyo foreign ministers meeting in Beijing on Tuesday, Wang Yi and his South Korean counterpart Kang Kyung-hwa held one-on-one talks for around an hour. Wang reportedly reiterated the importance of trilateral cooperation with Japan, saying Beijing is willing to help out if it can. Kang agreed, but said Tokyo is not responding to Seoul's request for talks. They also shared views on North Korea's recent missile firings and agreed that the North and the U.S. need to restart talks soon. Wang also stressed the importance of trust in solving Korean Peninsula issues. Now, following North Korea's rapid-fire testing of various missiles, America's top diplomat is calling on the North to resume talks with the United States. Mike Pompeo says such a move would be the best option for the North Korean people. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has urged North Korea to come to the negotiating table, expressing concerns over the regime's latest missile test launches. Speaking to CBS on Tuesday, Pompeo said the two countries have not returned to the table as quickly as he would have hoped. Such remarks follow the North's launching of two projectiles last Friday, the latest in a series of tests of short-range missiles or other projectiles by the regime since late July, in protest against joint military drills between Seoul and Washington. The message comes as U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Stephen Biegun, is in South Korea to discuss the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Pompeo also said he hopes to see Chairman Kim Jong-un come to the negotiating table for a better outcome, which will ultimately help the North Korean people as well as the international community. Referring to Kim's denuclearization pledge made in Singapore last year, Pompeo highlighted that President Trump is committed to keeping the American people safe by ensuring the North Korean leader delivers on his promise. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, as we heard there, Washington's nuclear envoy for North Korea is in Seoul as we speak for talks on solidifying security cooperation between South Korea, Japan and the U.S. On this Wednesday, Stephen Biegun will likely ask South Korea to renew its military intel sharing agreement with Japan. The trade friction with Tokyo has prompted South Korea to reconsider that deal, which will be automatically renewed unless Seoul decides to pull out by Saturday. Biegun will also likely discuss possible working level talks between North Korea and the U.S. And South Korea and the United States are busy preparing for their upcoming defense cost-sharing negotiations, according to Seoul's Foreign Ministry, the heads of the previous round of negotiations, Jang Won-sam and Timothy Betts, held closed-door talks on Tuesday in the South Korean capital. They exchanged views on how to carry out the 11th round of the Special Measures Agreement consultation. They won't be involved in those, though, as new chief negotiators are said to be currently under review. South Korea paid around $860 million in 2019 for its share of stationing US troops on the peninsula. The Korean Sport and Olympic Committee has raised concerns over radiation in Fukushima and food from that region at a National Olympic Committee meeting in Tokyo. However, Tokyo's Olympic Organizing Committee dismissed the claims on Tuesday, saying they are doing all they can to ensure the food supply is completely safe for next year's Summer Olympics. Other issues, including Japan's sweltering summer heat and poor water quality, were raised by other delegations. This week's seminar will check on preparations for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Now, President Moon Jae-in is urging South Korea to slash its dependence on core materials from certain countries. It seems to be a clear signal to Japan that Seoul will ramp up efforts to localize the supply of high-tech materials amid the country's trade row with Japan. On Tuesday, he traveled to the west of the country to visit an assembly line producing carbon fiber. Shin Se-min has this report.
President Moon Jae-in said the country needs to depend less on specific nations when it comes to core materials, adding that this is the way to become an unshakable economic powerhouse.
책임 있는 경제 강국이 되기 위해서는 핵심 소재의 특정 국가 의존도를 줄여야 합니다. 이제 시작입니다. 제조업 강국 한국의 저력을 다시 보여줄 수 있습니다.
While attending an event orchestrated by Hyosung Advanced Materials, the president promised to nurture the nation's carbon fiber industry in light of Hyosung Group's announcement that it will invest a total of 1 trillion won, or over $827 million, in its production line of carbon fiber plant by the year 2028. Hyosung says the expansion of the production line in Cheonju, Jeollabuk-do province will place it as the world's #3 carbon fiber producer. And the group's carbon fiber business plans to churn out 24,000 tons of carbon fiber every year at 10 production lines starting 2028. This material in particular, with 1/4 the weight of steel but 10 times stronger, is a key element for the hydrogen energy market, which in turn feeds the automobile, aerospace, and defense industries. Carbon fiber is also one of the items potentially subject to Japan's tighter export controls against South Korea. The conglomerate, being the first homegrown company to develop carbon fibers in 2011, helped make South Korea the 4th country to cultivate such technology after Japan, the U.S., and Germany. However, much of the nation's auto industry has been relying on Japan-made carbon fiber for production of fuel storage tanks. The president's visit to Hyosung plant on Tuesday is seen as part of his determined drive to up the nation's competitiveness in the high-tech materials industry amid a downgrading trade relations with Japan. Moon, urging local companies to join in on fostering homegrown technologies, promised to support with investment and review possibilities of immuning preliminary assessment for R&D firms in need of self-reliance. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
South Korea's producer prices remained flat on month in July. The Bank of Korea says the production price index, a key barometer of future consumer inflation, stood at 103.5. The central bank said electricity and gas prices went up slightly, but industrial goods prices dropped on falling electronics goods prices. Agricultural goods prices fell on an increase in supply. On year, July producer prices fell by 0.3%. Now, South Korea is banning domestic sales of several Audi, Volkswagen and Porsche models, saying they violate strict regulations on auto emissions. The Environment Ministry says it will heavily fine all three. and urged prosecutors to open criminal cases against the local units of the German auto giants. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The Ministry of Environment announced Tuesday that it will ban domestic sales of 8 models of Audi, Volkswagen, and Porsche diesel cars for violating emissions regulations. The move comes as a probe by the ministry found that the German automakers manipulated pollution control devices in the vehicles. Reports indicate 1,261 cars from the 8 models were sold in South Korea from May 2015 to January last year. The ban comes as tests show diesel exhaust fluid, which limits emissions, was performing at lower levels than reported in the automaker's certification tests. The rigging caused the cars to emit 10 times more nitrogen oxide gas into the atmosphere compared to normal levels.
Cutting the capacity of the diesel exhaust fluid tank helps the manufacturer in terms of space utilization and design by reducing the size of the trunk. However, for the consumer, this reduces the amount of diesel exhaust fluid in the vehicles.
The ministry plans to cancel the import certifications of the affected models, order correction measures, and impose heavy penalties. Audi Volkswagen Korea is said to be fined $6.5 million, while Porsche Korea faces a fine of $3.3 million. The ministry adds it will also file complaints with the prosecution to investigate the automakers. The inquiry was launched in mid-2018 when Germany detected tempered emissions control systems in cars made by Audi. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, with tensions still rising between mainland China and Hong Kong over the pro-democracy protests on the island, a new twist in this tale is emerging. A British government worker in Hong Kong has vanished during a trip to China. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Kim Dami. So, Dami, tell us more.
Right, Mark. The man in question is Simon Cheng, a 28-year-old trade and investment officer at the UK consulate in Hong Kong. So he was returning from a trip to Shenzhen in China on August 8th when his girlfriend lost contact with him. She told a Hong Kong news website that the territory's immigration service informed her that Cheng had been placed under administrative detention in China in an unknown location for unknown reasons. The UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Office is now seeking further information from authorities in Guangdong Province and Hong Kong. China's Foreign Ministry claims it knows nothing about the situation. Under administrative detention in China, Cheng can be held up for up to 15 days without charge. According to his girlfriend, he has not participated in any of the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, the U.S. has made a firm stance on the China-Hong Kong dispute, bringing up the potential for it to affect a possible U.S. trade deal with China. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told CNBC on Tuesday that it will be more difficult to reach a trade deal if the protests end in a violent way. Pressed on what level of violence that might mean, he noted that President Trump said something like Tiananmen Square. The international community is criticizing Washington's recent test of a ground-launched cruise missile just weeks after pulling out of a key treaty with Russia that banned such moves. The Kremlin said on Tuesday that the last Sunday's missile test showed the U.S. has long been preparing to exit the nuclear pact known as the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, or INF. China also said that tests will intensify global arms race, which in turn would have a negative impact on the region and global security. Earlier last week, North Korea also said U.S. missile deployments to South Korea would have negative effects worse than the THAAD deployment. Italy's Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has announced his resignation amid the country's ongoing political crisis. In a speech to Italy's parliament on Tuesday local time, Conte criticized Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini and accused him of bringing down the ruling coalition and weakening the country by calling for an election. Earlier this month, Salvini, the leader of the anti-immigrant League Party, said his alliance with the anti-establishment Five-Star Movement was dead, deepening the 14-month-old government turmoil.
Now, good news for TV and movie lovers looking for even more content to while away the hours. Two local online streaming platforms are merging to become the largest video service provider in South Korea. The move is aimed at competing with global giants such as Netflix and YouTube. Choi Si-young reports.
On Tuesday, South Korea's Fair Trade Commission announced the merger of two online video streaming platforms. One is Oksusu, operated by local mobile carrier SK Telecom, and the other is Puk, run by Korea's three main broadcasters. Starting service next month, the new integrated platform called Wave will be the biggest video streaming service in the country by number of subscribers with 14 million, almost 7 times what Netflix has in South Korea. 30% of Wave will be owned by mobile carrier SK Telecom, while the rest will go in 3 equal shares to the broadcasters. Those opposed to the merger have raised the possibility that Korea's #1 communication firm SK Telecom might abuse its dominant market position. The Fair Trade Commission listened to those concerns and approved the merger on a few conditions. For example, SK Telecom cannot discriminate against non-SK Telecom users by banning them from subscribing to the new Wave. And after the merger, the 3 broadcasters cannot start charging for content they provided for free until now. The 2 companies, through their merger, said they will attract larger-scale investment and utilize it for content production. They said they will not only defend the domestic market from Netflix and YouTube, but also advance overseas, competing globally with their own original content. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
One of the 4 centuries-old Joseon Dynasty-era gates in Seoul has been restored using digital technology and is now available to view by the public, also known as Seodaemun Gate. Don-Eui-moon Gate, located in the west of the city, was torn down in 1915 during Japan's colonial rule. Its actual physical restoration was impractical due to traffic and compensation for the land where the gate once stood. Officials restored it using VR and augmented reality technologies. People can download a mobile app to get a glimpse at what the gate looked like in the past. K-pop boy band BTS has been nominated in 5 categories for this year's MTV's Video Music Awards. The American TV channel raised the number of nominations from 4, explaining that BTS has now also been nominated in the Best Group category. The 7-member group is also competing in categories including Best K-pop. The ceremony will be held next Monday in the U.S. state of New Jersey. Awards will be dished out in a total of 23 categories, including Video of the Year, Artist of the Year, and Song of the Year. Time now for our Life and Info segment, where we focus on information we hope is useful for your everyday life. We're going to jump straight into it today. We have our business correspondent Kim Hae-sung in the studio to discuss the rising vegan trend here in South Korea. South Korea is known for being a nation of meat-loving people. It might not be everyone's cup of black tea, but tell us more about this rising trend of veganism.
Right, veganism is the practice of abstaining from eating or drinking animal products, including milk or eggs. And it also rejects the commodity status of animals. It's against the cruelty of using animals for animal testing. So it's against the use of animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. And products tailored to vegans here in Korea are on the rise. So for food products, I'm sure many have heard of meat-free burger patties made out of plants like pea protein. There's been a sharp increase in the number of vegan food businesses. It's doubled here in Korea in the past 8 years, including burgers and bakeries that do not use dairy products or eggs. Hotel chains like the Grand Hyatt Hotel also added a new vegan burger menu in June. At grocery stores, you can also easily find meat-free, plant-based products. And vegan ice creams that are made of soy milk are also on offer at some department stores.
So what you're saying is that there's something for everyone, everything from burgers, cakes and ice cream. But what's really driving this trend of veganism here in South Korea?
There are a couple of reasons: for health or animal welfare, or just for environmental protection. And data show more than a third of world's grain production is used to produce meat, contributing to food security problems and climate change. Veganism is mainly led by millennials, those aged 25 to 34. Take a listen to an expert.
Millennials have a tendency to show their values and beliefs via their consumption patterns. With this change in awareness that emphasizes ethical consumption and animal protection, and social media that spreads this message via pictures and videos, more companies are coming up with vegan products, and veganism is growing rapidly.
In fact, 1 out of 4 American millennials identify themselves as vegans or vegetarians. And according to the Korea Vegetarian Union, around 1.5 million Koreans are vegans or vegetarians. That's about 3% of the total population, and the number has increased tenfold since 2008, so that's huge.
Yeah.
And this interest in vegan lifestyle has expanded into the field of cosmetics. There are foreign brands and Korean local brands in drugstores, including shampoos and lotions that are vegan products. Many have been introduced this year, and vegan products are stamped with a vegan certification mark, proving that they did not use animal ingredients or byproducts in the manufacturing process, haven't been tested on animals, and are GMO-free.
I look at smartphone cosmetics apps to make sure I buy products that use eco-friendly ingredients, not chemical ingredients.
Interesting then. So I guess we are going to see much more innovation in the field of vegan products in the years to come.
Definitely. There's even a term called veganomics to describe the vegan market, as it's just the industry is huge. So we have seen rapid growth in North America and Europe. You see fast food chains offering vegan burgers, vegan donuts, vegan tacos, and prices are similar to non-vegan products given the high demand. And a similar phenomenon is happening here in Asia. As for cosmetics goods that we just saw, Grandview research shows that the market will expand by an annual average of 6% and top $20 billion by 2025. So yes, we'll definitely see more vegan products in the next couple of years.
Well, I should show my mother this report, Hae-sung, because she is a strict vegetarian, not quite a vegan, and she always complains about the lack of options really here in South Korea, but I can show her that the market is growing a lot and will get even better. Hae-sung, as always, thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure.
Good morning. Have an umbrella handy as rain is in store. Showers that started on Jeju Island this morning will gradually spread nationwide. And rain clouds will drop showers on southern coastal regions in the morning and spread to other southern parts of the country and the Chungcheong provinces by the afternoon. And those southern areas could see up to 150 millimeters of heavy rain with stormy conditions through Thursday night. And up north, we'll see light sprinkles today and between 5 to 10 millimeters from tomorrow morning. And unlike the hot afternoon we had yesterday, daily highs will be 2 to 3 degrees lower today. Highs will be ranging from 29 to 32 degrees Celsius. And upper regions will be under a lot of cloud coverage today. And this band of rain will bring slightly cooler conditions with it. Temperatures will go down and we'll have far cooler mornings, but the air will also get a touch drier. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for views around the world.
Well, that's where we're going to leave the news and weather for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. Plenty more coming up, including our next newscast that's scheduled for noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.